Hello and welcome to our Black Lives Matter discussion series. Today we will be discussing Flowers for the Sea by Zin E. Rocklyn. So before we get into it, let's just take a quick minute to introduce ourselves. My name is Marissa and I work in the outreach department at the Ann Arbor District Library. I'll be kind of facilitating today.
Hi there. My name is Elizabeth, and I am a librarian at the library focusing on purchasing the adult fiction collection. Also do a lot of programming for all ages.
I'm Anne. I am a book processor, primarily working out of the downtown branch currently.
I'm Krista, and I am a desk clerk for the Ann Arbor District Library, and I work at all of the branches.
And my name is Jacob. Like Marissa, I'm a part of the outreach department, and I'm excited to discuss this book.
Okay, so normally we don't really do any trigger warnings, but because the author put this on page one and how much of the book is taken up by it, and because we always talk about spoilers, I'm just going to read that first page, um, just because I might as well. Author's note, for my readers, Flowers for the Sea contains depictions of infant harm and death, the realities of birth, and generational trauma. So with that, does anyone want to give a quick synopsis or describe what this novella is about? Or I can if no one wants to.
I can give it a shot, but I don't exactly know what it was about, but I can I can give it a shot. So this is a fantasy novella. So it takes place in a world that is not our own. It centers on a woman who is stranded on a ship with a couple dozen other human-like people. The world has flooded, or their world has flooded, and they've been on this ship for over 1,700 days. She's also pregnant with a being that is not humanoid. She's very unhappy to be pregnant. All of the other women who've been pregnant on the ship have not successfully given birth. But this is sort of implied that it's her, I don't know, calling or duty or something to kind of give birth to whatever she's holding. She's very resistant to that. And it's only about 100 pages. The short novella kind of covers the lead up to the birth, and then the aftermath of what happens when she kind of births this creature. So that's kind of the very loose summary, but I'm looking forward to delving in more and getting some others' interpretations of some of the details.
Yeah, that was solid. I think that was really solid. So yeah, I think she writes, horror, dark fantasy. Do you guys read that stuff? I know, Elizabeth, you don't normally read that stuff. This is pretty short. Do you feel like you already kind of said you didn't maybe necessarily know what was going on, but did y'all feel like you had a solid grasp on what happened? It's so short, so there's not a lot. There's a lot packed in here, but there's also like, it's a tight 100 something pages, so I don't
I
know.
wouldn't say I had a firm grasp of what was going on, but I think I was able to follow it. It's very poetic. It's very impressionistic. I don't get an image in my head of the environment, but I understand it like emotionally, and I feel it, and I definitely feel like her, I don't know, like she's shut in and she doesn't want to be, like, both physically and also with the pregnancy. So it was very emotional and impressionistic rather than just like watching a movie. It's like not quite a straight narrative. But like it kept me going. If I'd been able to, I would have just sat and read it straight through.
I really liked the atmosphere of the book, the kind of feeling of the world, but I felt like I read a prologue to something. Like just felt like I was dipping my toe in a little picture of the world, and um, it was hard to kind of fully settle into it because it was over so quickly.
I would say I had a very similar experience when reading this, where I can't say for sure I knew what was going on, but what I was able to connect with while reading was the atmosphere that she built. I think one of the first sentences in the book is about how, like, when children on the ship learn how to walk, they learn how to walk with the ship always moving. And I'm like, oh, okay, that I understood, that colored in the world for me. Or the book was very sensory. And some of those senses I did not want to be feeling. Sticky and stinky and wet. And uh, the author used our senses to, um, at least that's what I was able to connect with in reading the book, is that the sensory nature of it was very vibrant.
Yeah, it was definitely a visceral read. I thought it was like in a way it was really grounded of like, okay, it's just some people on a boat and you don't really like that's not super fantastical. There's not a lot of like I mean the name Araxi is kind of weird, but there's not a lot of crazy stuff. But then there's like razor fangs and it's kind of like, okay, how much is that going to come up? And like so in a way it was like super grounded and then there's also these other random things that are kind of tossed out that I'm like I would like it to be more like the ship is kind of fantastical. I think they said it's 4 decks and it's like there's some sci-fi stuff going on. They clearly have some kind of technology. There's desalination and they have this room that's growing plants and like that's super interesting, but you don't get to see a whole lot of it. Um, yeah. But so Araxes, the main character, did you like her? What did you think about her? 'Cause she's a little spicy. I will frame here. Let me frame this question more. So in an interview with her, she said part of the story seed, the impetus for writing this was I always want to make the point of writing Black women who are unlikable because I want to show the humanity that is still deserving of empathy and of compassion. I want to show that they are not just nannies from the help. We are not always the congenial, sage advice type of character. I want us to be shown as the character who's mighty and strong and wrong, but you understand why they're standing in that position. So I wanted to extend people's sense of empathy and compassion. Which, yeah, I mean, Araxi's not the most likable, but I didn't think she was super unlikable. Like, I definitely understood where she was at.
I really enjoyed reading reading about a woman who is pregnant but doesn't want to be, because I think that's like very taboo in a lot of writing and in a lot of society. And I thought that was a very I mean, and like she like not only she's not ambivalent, she like does not want this child. She and like also she kind of wants to be dead. Um, and so I thought while it was like difficult to read, I actually really admired her for, I mean, I know she's fictional, but like I admired the character for her like steadfastness in that. Um, and her like anger, I thought was difficult, but also really powerful. And I thought it was refreshing to read an angry character who's like burdened with pregnancy. And I just think that that's something that you don't frequently see. So I don't know if like likable versus unlikable is necessarily my comparison, but I thought it was like enticing and almost like exciting in a way to read her character.
Yes, I found it refreshing to meet a character who is defiant and able to express their anger, and their anger is like underpinned by their principles. Um, and she sticks to her guns. Um, and it kind of feels like today's political climate. It's like, yes, we are angry and defiant, or not we, I don't know the right. There's defiance and there's anger despite a really horrible environment. And saying, no, I'm a stick. No, I know I'm right. And I'm trusting in myself. I'm trusting in my emotions, and I'm gonna do what I want to do. Because I think it's the right thing. I like reading that kind of character.
I felt like her actions didn't always reflect what she was thinking inside, but once you get her entire backstory, which you don't really get till the end, it makes a little more sense. Like if I went back and read it, I might view some of the things I found as contradictory as not actually contradictory. Because sometimes she's thinking maybe a little more sympathetically than the way she's actually treating people. Which, when you realize what was done to her, yeah, that kind of makes sense that she might be meaner to them than she's necessarily feeling inside. Like she's not a mean person, she's an angry person.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily find her unlikable just because everything she was feeling felt justified. Um, so yeah, I also felt like the other characters were not really three-dimensional, which made her behavior towards them feel less mean, or I don't know. I had a hard time grasping this book.
Can I ask a question about her backstory? Because this was, I think, one of the things I found most confusing. Is that okay, Marissa? Um, so basically, like she was part of this like sort of like clan of people that had like power to predict the ocean, sort of, but then like the rest of the village or town that they lived in, like kind of needed them, but also was mad at them for this power. And then like why did her family get burned? Like her whole family got burned, but she's lived, but then they all died. I kind of missed that part. Like, did the villagers get mad at them because the oceans were rising and then they killed them? I didn't get that.
As I understand it, so really let that sink in. As I understand it, the um, leader of the folks who dislike her family, but like need them, exactly how you described it, asked for her hand in marriage. And when she said no, um, they burned down, they killed her family. But she has a long lineage of like her grandmother had also said no, or her grandmother had also been defiant, or so there's like a lineage of this in her family. But the relationship of like her being magical and her people being magical, I never really understood why the other people like hated them but needed them, but like needed them for what? But they burned down the family because she wouldn't marry the prince.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I got out of it too. And I think it said she had like turned him down like multiple times. And she like didn't just turn him down, she like laughed at him. So she like humiliated him or embarrassed him too. So he felt like he had to
Like
like,
retaliate.
yeah, exactly.
I also read it a little, which night, having read a ton of interviews now with her, I don't, she's a little, seems like the author who's kind of writing based on vibes and maybe is only then in retrospect seeing what works. So I don't know how much was intentional, but to me that does kind of fit with like in a way a slave narrative of people hating slaves but needing them. And so, I mean, even though the people who had this power weren't necessarily written as slaves. It's like clearly these people have some kind of power, but there's also a specific slur that she writes that
Mhm.
people are called. So it's like that same kind of, it's like a parallel at least of these people have some kind of power. They're kind of like animalistic in a way, which kind of fits with like how people stereotype that they're communing with the animals, the sea, something in the end. I don't know if it's like animals in the sea or just water. I was a little confused about that, but it's sort of a mirror for that in a way. And then when she rejected this prince, yeah, then people were mad. I wasn't sure if then her people made the water rise or if that was unrelated. That was a
Oh,
little,
I get that. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, is it because they were killed that the water? I don't know. But I feel like it's such a short book. That kind of thing is like, doesn't matter.
yeah. Yeah, half the time I'm like, let's just keep reading and maybe it'll make sense. Um, who knows? Um, Also, I know that the author said part of her reasoning for writing in that slur was because she always personally felt like an outcast. She's a first generation American. Her family is from Trinidad, so she always felt like an outcast in some ways, even from other Black Americans and then from other Trinidadians, like constantly being othered and categorized and put in these different boxes, and she didn't really fit. So that's kind of, I think, where she was pulling from, which is interesting coloring for it. Um,
One thing I noticed too, I'd forgotten it until you mentioned the slave narrative. She's described as having like black skin, whereas the other people you meet, she says they have lighter skin than she does, because that's one of the things that kind of endears the child to her, is that she has the same black skin. So I don't know if that means anything, but it is something that gets mentioned multiple times throughout the short book.
I had forgotten, I listened to it and I had forgotten that it was shelved in fantasy. And so as it was starting, I thought I was on a slave ship. Like that's what I thought. I thought it was like historical fiction, and that's where I placed myself until it no longer made sense for me to be placing myself there because it started getting weird.
um, so let's talk about pregnancy for a little bit. Um, so it's very visceral and it takes up a lot of the book. She's pregnant for probably at least half the book, and then there's a very long birth scene. Um, and the author, in interviews at least, I don't believe that she's ever birthed a child, but there was an interview that I found that said she did have two pregnancies that she didn't carry to term. So she does, have some credibility for what she's writing about. Um, it's definitely a lot going on there. It was an uncomfortable read. I mean, it was uncomfortable. I think horror, when it's doing its job, makes you uncomfortable. Um,
One of the difficult or like one of the hardest parts for me about it was how the author blurred, okay, so it's all fiction, but blurred like reality with kind of how Araxi felt. So like there was one point where she's like her like stomach was splitting open and you could see like the it's like it's very graphic, but like you can see like the fat and the flesh and everything. And I was like, oh no, but then it's like a few cents later, she's like, or at least that's how it felt. So like that wasn't actually happening. And like she talks about feeling like the child like clawing out of her spine, which again is like the pain and how she's feeling. But the way the author writes it, it's very horrific. And often she writes it so that you're not sure what exactly is happening versus not. And like ultimately the birth itself is fairly human like. I mean, the thing that comes out is not human, but like it was just a very drawn out with a lot of like, wait, is that what's happening? Oh no, that's just like the pain or how she's feeling. But yeah, it's tough. It was tough to read, especially being unsure of like what was real and what was not for me.
Like what Elizabeth was saying with you weren't sure what was real and what was not with the birth. Um, the other people didn't seem to find anything unusual. about like what was happening. So it was difficult to know like what was literal and what was sort of this is what it feels like. I'm saying it literally, but it's not literal. Like, yeah.
Um, it's funny that you brought that up, Jacob, just because I was reading or I was listening to a podcast about this book, and they specifically brought up that scene. And they were a person who has given birth, and they were like, I'm so glad that was included. That's just a thing that people do. And I'm so glad it was like normalized and like in there. And like, yeah, this book is like weird and gross and like obviously like horrific, but also like, that's just a thing that happens. Um, and it's funny that of all the reviews that I was reading too, it seems like there's kind of two camps about pregnancy of one is like I want to call it the pregnancy propaganda of like it's the most important thing a woman can ever do. And so it's kind of this like flowery, beautiful, natural thing and you glow and like and then there's like the people who are like no, this is actually how it is and it's like a very horrific thing that can like permanently damage your body and like leeches like if you are not properly getting nutrients, it will take nutrients from your bones and your teeth, and it hurts and it's terrible. And so it's like there's those two camps of how honest I guess you maybe are being about the process. And there's so much fear and dread about all of that that in such a short book, she really hit on a lot of it. Like there's this also underlying dread of like, I don't want this baby. But also, is it normal? I don't know if it's going to be normal, and then it's not normal. Um, like the deep exhaustion, the physical horror and pain of it, the mental and physical exhaustion, the screaming baby who's literally then making your ears bleed, who I'm sure for some new parents probably feels like that, even if it isn't literally making you do that. Um, And then also, so Zin E Rocklyn is also genderqueer. And so I wonder if part of it too is just like the experience of not being fully present in your body or having some like dysmorphia there of like what, like your body's just fully changing and it's really weird and there's a lot of stuff going on. Um, I got real deep into the reviews, you guys. Um,
Well, and there's commentary on like fertility too, right? Because when she goes into the like what's it called? The green room, which is
Mhm.
where they're trying to grow food, but it's like not going great anymore and like everything's kind of dying. But as soon as she like any of her bodily fluids like hit the ground, then all of a sudden the trees are like just like bursting into bloom and fruit and all of that. And like it's so they're so like it's happening so quickly that they're like blooming and growing and then like the fruits dropping with rot. And I thought that was also a very interesting commentary on like how especially like people view women of a certain age as like time to have children and like you are it's like like you're fertile and like blah blah blah. And I just thought that was also a very interesting thing to touch on among every other thing, and I was glad that she hit on that too. And it was also like almost like comical in a way because she like peed on a tree and then it was like burst into bloom. And I just like I don't know, it was another just touch into the whole experience.
And what a really cool image. That image stayed with me after the tree blooming and the fruit drops and it rots. And it's like, there's lots of cool images in this particular.
yeah. Um, And then there was a quote that I thought was really cool from her about the sex scene. Just I thought it was important to include because she is talking specifically about Black women. I forget which interview I read this from, but I wrote it down. So sorry to whoever, whichever interview I read this from. Um, while we're not seen as sexual beings, or while we are seen as sexual beings, we're rarely seen as sensual beings. We've been used and abused for hundreds of years for the sake of personal slavery to the advancement of science, but never as human beings who use their own bodies, who own their bodies and their sexuality. Even in contemporary thought, there's the myth of the strong black woman who needs no partner, no love, and that simply isn't true. It's a bastardization of the mantra that means we won't put up with bullshit. I want my fiction to make that distinction that we crave and deserve love and nurturing, which I just thought is important to like mention as well.
That quote really illuminates a lot because in the book, when she's having sex, and I don't remember the gentleman's name during labor, at least I remember she's explicit about it's not about moving the birth along, it's about she wants to have sex and she wants to feel pleasure. So that quote illuminates my mind is doing some arranging and piecing together, so that was helpful.
And she wants to be comforted, right? Like she feels like she want like when I think his name is Herat or Herat, I don't know, but like when he's like comforting standing by her, she's very touched by that. And then when it turns out that he's, I don't know, sleeping also with the like midwife lady, she's like bummed, because I think that she like is seeking love and comfort as well, and like wants that. And yeah.
And there was also the like, I don't want to say a love triangle, but with also Amit, or I think was her
Yeah,
other
yeah.
sister, which kind of felt a little corny on first read. And then I was like, oh, yeah, this also like kind of makes sense.
And I think that's why she felt so angry and betrayed at Amit, because she did love him and she felt strong with him and cherished by him, and like gave up this, like yelled at this prince because she wanted to be with him. And then somehow he turned on her, but it's not clear how that happened, just that it did. And I wish there'd been a little bit more there. But I think that's why she was so angry at him, is because like he was her world and she felt safe with him, and somehow he betrayed her.
And we haven't talked much about Ket, who's like the ship doctor. I don't know, did you have any thoughts about her or that dynamic? Because they have actually quite a few scenes together, which are not comfortable to read, in my opinion.
Yeah, so Ket was just one of the like former villagers that mistreated her, basically, right? And then also has a relationship with Herat, and also isn't really a trained doctor. She just kind of became that while they were on the ship. But I didn't quite get the animosity. I wasn't sure if that was from the past because Ket had been part of like killing her family, or I wasn't sure if that was the present because Ket and Herat have a thing. But yeah, I mean, Ket does tend to, what's her name? Araxi, like pretty well. Like she doesn't harm her and she like helps her with the birth, but it's like they don't like each other.
Well, it seemed like there was a lot of importance being put on this birth. So it felt kind of like Ket was treating Roxy just as the bearer of this baby as opposed
Mhm.
to a person.
Yeah, I found their relationship a little confusing. I wish there'd been maybe a little more backstory there or something. But yeah, you're right. She did treat her less as a person and more as like a thing that she had to deal with.
Mhm.
One of their scenes together is post birth, and Ket is sewing her back up, and she intentionally inflicts pain to her Araxi. And I think that scene kind of highlighted the horrors of like the medical system and how much you are in um, the hands of other people and how much power they hold over you. Um, just add another element of like despair to this book.
Yeah, I thought it had hints of like, I don't know, professional niceness maybe of like there's definitely she's at times maybe she's not saying everything she wants to say, which would probably be like F you. Um, so she's trying to like be nice because she doesn't want more pain, but then I think there is clearly a moment where she's like, I'm still gonna say something, like, I don't care. And so she does, and then yeah, I mean Ket is rougher and meaner and because she's fully powerless in that moment. And it's uh hard to read of just how much you're in someone else's hands, I guess.
But then there's a scene close to the very end where Ket's holding the baby and like seemingly being like tender with it. Right? That confused me too. I don't know.
Yeah, I that got me too. And I kind of wondered if their plan that they were hatching that she stumbled upon overhearing was that they were going to take her baby and then like get rid of her. I don't know, but I
Because
felt like Ket, yeah, being tender with the baby felt was like a confirmation for me, like, oh, she's trying to take her baby for some reason.
because did you guys think I don't think it's clear in the book, but did you think the baby looked normal to everyone else? Or was it talking only to Araxi? Like, because clearly it's talking to Araxi and she's in this weird goo bath. But
I
then,
thought
yeah,
it actually had gills. I guess I thought that that was real, like the gills. So
Yeah,
that's why I was especially
Yeah.
confused at the end because I was
I
like,
think they were real, but I do feel like I got the impression that the birth and the baby herself looked normal to everybody, but like maybe the gills were only just like they were invisible when she wasn't using them or something like that. It was confusing.
because this
yeah,
baby, like, you know, they talk a lot about how like other people had gotten pregnant, no one had carried to term, there have been no new babies born. Everyone is watching her, hates her, but also wants a baby born, is like hope for the future of humanity. Here,
and the fact that they're in this just world of water, it's possible that specifically her family and whatever made them special with the water, part of it was related to why they thought that her baby would be this future of the world. Um, and that gills and things like that would be necessary to survive in this future. But I don't know. I felt like the talking between them was just between them, but it didn't even occur to me that that the baby's physical manifestation might not be the same to the people on the boat. I don't know.
because when she's in the bathtub, she's getting like stung by something, and it's like, does this baby have tentacles? Is the goo stinging her? Like, what is, I don't know. It didn't
yeah, I
express.
thought the baby had tentacles.
But the
I don't.
tentacles came out of their eyeballs.
Oh yeah. What?
Did it?
It wasn't like they had tentacles. It was like,
Uh, I need to reread some parts. Hmm. Interesting. Okay, well, so the ending. Do we think this was justified? Do you think it was enough? What is happening at the end?
I was
Does she like?
surprised when it ended. Like I was waiting for more. Like I turned the page and was like, wait, what? Like I was really expecting more. And it could have gone on. I mean it's definitely she made a choice to end it there and that's fine. But I would felt like I was so invested at this point and like just starting to put the pieces together because Araxi's memories finally came back to her, meaning we also got her full story. And then it just kind of ends. It stops.
So you know how it flashes back? Amit was with her when her family was being murdered, and they escaped to the seashore. So I'm making myself laugh. They escaped to the seashore, where she then goes into the sea without Amit. When she's in the sea, she has an interaction with some sort of creature that the author makes clear is not a merman. Some sort of creature. How, and then that reveal somehow plays into the ending of the book. But what is being revealed and what is the ending of the book? She gets up on the razor fangs and flies away
With the baby.
with the baby. And she's also omniscient at that point. Like she's like rising up on the back of the razor fang and she's looking down and she's like, Ket is pregnant. Kets will not give birth successfully. And then she's like, she becomes, she knows things about people. I'm just talking.
Well, and also when she says Ket's pregnant, the baby wouldn't survive even if Ket was going to survive. So I feel like when she got up on the razor fang, she ordered everybody's death.
Yeah. Like I thought she like was gonna sink this ship, go full Circe and burn the whole city down, kind of a thing.
Because the baby says to her, are you ready to assume your responsibility? And the word that the baby refers to Araxi as is like, you are like queen, you are the queen. So she has a role to play amongst a role of power to play amongst whatever kind of creature her baby is. She is now the mother or queen.
Yeah, specifically it was mother, not just queen, but mother in a leader kind of way, but also in as a giving birth, which I thought tied into the trees as we were talking about. Um, she was bringing like food back, nature back, and like maybe birthing this new world of water.
Now that's pretty cool.
Because aren't there sea creatures as well as razor fangs? Okay. And now she is like cool with both of those. Well, the razor fang let her climb on it.
I had also been picturing the razor fangs as like a pelican-sized thing, like tiny but fierce. And then she's like on its head, and I was like, oh, this is like a pterodactyl-sized
Like a dragon.
thing. Yeah. Um, I would like more of this. Like in that's the moment where I'm like, this is the prequel to a bigger story, or this is, I do in general like short fiction because I'm sometimes lazy and I want to be able to finish a book and feel good about finishing something. Um, but sometimes it feels unsatisfying sometimes because I want more.
And I think short fantasy is particularly difficult because you have so many questions about the world and the background and stuff like that, that don't get answered because it's short. I have a dumb question that Jacob and I talked about. Okay, like, does it matter who the father of the baby is?
No, not really.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it
I
seems
kept
like the
thinking that would
father's
come
not
out.
human just because the baby's not human. Um, they clearly seem to think it's just one dude, but she does. It actually never confirms that. She just like allows them to think that. Maybe.
I believe the interaction she had with whatever creature in the sea who is not a merman, but thank you for telling me what he isn't. I'd really just like to know what he is, but he's not a merman, or they are not a merman. I believe that was the conception of her baby. But then she's got to carry the baby for 1,700 days on the ship. I
No,
don't
and
think.
they say in the book, Kat says you've been pregnant for like over 300 days. So that's why I was like, okay, so this happened like on the boat.
Yeah,
Does
I
it
was
say
confused
that?
about the timeline. Exactly.
Yeah,
I was very confused about the timeline because they mentioned specific numbers of days when things happen, how long they've been on the
right,
boat, how long she's been pregnant, or at least how long they think she's been pregnant. I mean,
right.
if
I was
this
like, who
isn't
knows?
human, maybe it's a very long gestation period.
Yeah.
Because the normal gestation is like 280. I did Google it because I was like, what's happening? But also it's fantasy, so none of this really what matters. I don't know. Um, is there anything that we haven't talked about that is burning in your mind? Yeah. Um,
I would like to know more about the tentacled creatures that live in the sea. There's the razor fangs, and then almost kind of sidebar. She's like, "Oh, and the big creature's coming up in the water." Anyways, and I'm like, "Wow, what's the big creature in the water?"
I thought that too. I was like, wait, what's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's a better description of the razor fangs than the tentacled creatures. Like for I think the first part where they're both present when she's up on the dock or the deck, I was getting them confused. Like when she's describing them. I feel like the razor fangs had a better description than the tentacle
Mm.
thingies.
No, I felt that way too. I thought at first, I think for a little bit, I thought that was the same thing. But then I figured it out eventually.
fair enough. Um, all right, I guess I will leave us with just in general talking about the author and saying like they believe she's fairly young, pretty early in her career from what I could tell. She has won a few awards. This was nominated for the Nebula Best Novella Award in 2021 and nominated for the Ignite Award for the Best Novella in 2022, and it did win the Shirley Jackson Award in 2022. And then she won the Joseph F. Pulver Award for Weird Fiction in 2022. Um, just because I was looking at what else has she written. Is she going to come out with like a full novel at some point? She does have a couple other like short essays and short things that have been published. Just because I think her style is interesting. I don't know if anyone has any other recommendations. She does have one short story that I liked called Summer Skin, which was pretty creepy. It's about a girl who follows her auntie on the train. It's very short. And then she has a novelette, which is an even shorter novella. I guess I had never heard of novelette before. It's only like 30 pages. It's called The Night Sun. Um, and you can find it online. It's really good. So hopefully maybe she'll be publishing more stuff in the future. I don't know if anyone has any other audio authors or books that this reminded you of. That you want to point us towards, or we can just say goodnight.
I do feel like weird fiction is a perfect description for this. Like if someone said to me, "Oh, what genre is it?" Weird fiction, because you've got tentacles, you've got kind of a cosmic horror, existential, not really dread, but crisis. So yeah, weird horror is such a perfect description. Even the cover, it has a woman with tentacles wrapped around her. Like, yes, like it's weird horror. That's such a perfect description.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time for our next book.